when more people get into the market, the quality drops,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's
Absolutely.
like, I mean, it's the same thing as, get a designer handbag and then Target gets a license with the designer. I don't think anybody thinks the Target version is actually the same quality as the Rodeo Drive version, right? It looks the same, but it's not quite the same. But then what happens, right, is so now the market is flooded with group programs and online courses, not all of which are of the same quality, not all of which are of the same effectiveness, but word starts to spread that online courses aren't working, that group programs aren't working. And because they're not, right? Because the quality went down.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how.
I'm wondering if you have been seeing the same thing I have been seeing recently, which is cookie cutter frameworks and one-size-fits-all solutions aren't delivering the results they promise. Now that actually, I don't think is new information. I think that's kind of old news. But what is new information is I'm starting to see people out and loud in places like LinkedIn and on other podcasts and even on YouTube channels and such that I follow actually talking about this elephant in the room. So today I'm here with Gwen and we are going to be talking about this phenomenon that I've noticed. I don't know if Gwen's noticing it. We'll find out in just a moment. But also, what does that mean? If we're moving away from these cookie cutter one size fits all solutions, where are we going? Gwen, you are here and I am curious. Have you seen what I am seeing?
I have seen a little more discussion. Now, I do not stay on top of things like you stay on top of things. So the fact that I haven't seen it as much really is not saying anything. If I see way less than you see.
I think you're saying I'm chronically online, which may be true. Maybe true there.
But it's also part of your job and your role. So that makes sense. But I would say proportionally from what I was seeing. So like I said, if we're doing it like a per capita kind of analysis, I am seeing it more. And I always find it interesting because, this is one of these places that you would say, yeah, but you've been doing this for a really long time. And why did you start versus choosing the other? And then I always pull out the little Post-it note that you made me write for myself that reminds me that I often am doing things ahead of what other people are doing. So I have noticed it, but I have noticed it in the, yeah, so people are now starting to do more of what I do kind of way, as opposed to probably the way that you're seeing it, which is much more as a trend.
Yeah, well, and so the question that I'm going to ask you, and I'm just giving you a heads up, is I'm wondering, it's like I know that you do this, but I don't think the average person sees themselves in that same picture, right? So where I'm hoping to get by the end of this episode, dear listener, since you've been hanging out with us for a good 2.5 minutes now and don't know where we're going, is it possible to create meaningful, personalized client experiences without burning yourself out in the process? And if it is possible, how? So what I am seeing is, I do believe that what is old is new again. I have been in business long enough to see every single trend under the sun at this point go up and come down at least 3 times. And right now what I'm seeing is this resurgence of high-touch personalized services in the market. And I was talking to a friend the other day, mutual friend of mine and Gwen's, and, she was just like, yeah, okay, fine, courses are dead. She had been representing a few clients who were all having difficult launches. And she's like, fine. If courses are dead, then one-on-one is up, right? One-on-one just came back from the zombie apocalypse. And in 5 years, one-on-one will be part of the apocalypse and courses will be back up. That's the cycle of things, which is great. A pendulum swings back and forth, always does. Right now, if it's swinging toward personalized services after years of scale at all costs, that's great for anybody who has personalized services to offer. But I think we still have to address the issue, Gwen, which is the reason people like scaled offers or productized services, as I've heard it called, right? The reason people like to work one to many is you'd rather get paid 20 times for 1 hour than only get paid once. And for many people, one-on-one services are a burnout. And so I'm wondering from your perspective, how do you see that playing out? If somebody has been working in, doing group programs, doing courses, and right now they're going, that's not selling for me. What do I do next? And if next happens to be, okay, I'll go back to working one-on-one, how do you manage that and still have boundaries around your time and your energy and all of that?
So I think I'm going to not answer your question with a different...
Like that's anything new.
I know. Because what I think part of the problem is that causes these, up and down cycles, is that we're always chasing what we think somebody else wants.
Okay, you have to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and this goes back to what we talk a lot about, and it's really about the title of the show, The Business You Really Want. But if you're always chasing what everybody else wants, are you ever actually chasing what you want for your business? And so I think the burnout happens when you're chasing somebody else's, I'll say, dream of your business as opposed to your own, and really saying, do I actually like doing personalized services? Maybe you do, but someone told you you're supposed to scale, and so you stopped doing personalized services. This is going to be a heyday for you because you're going to actually be able to go back to personalized services. But if you're someone who really, the thought of doing 2 or 3 or 4 one-on-one Zoom calls in a week, let alone in a day, just makes you want to, choke yourself and, then that's probably not, there's nothing I can tell you that's going to make that overwhelming, not cause burnout, cause all of the things. And I think that's one of the things that I'll say does make me different is I'm willing to say that, to say, I know everyone says go one-on-one, screw them, keep your course, stay with your course, do your course. If that's what's really working for you. Now, like I said, I think the problem is we get too caught up in what other people are saying is successful because, as you know, I have not been doing courses and I have not been doing any sort of large group work. I have a few very, very small group things, but not large group work by what anyone would call, a scalable program. I don't have anything that anyone would call a scalable program that I've been doing for nearly 10 years now. And I'm able to do it successfully, continually, because it's what actually makes me happy with my business. I haven't chased the other things that say, well, the only way you're going to really be successful is to do ABC. And it's like, no, that is not the only way to be successful. Now, can I create $100 million business doing one-on-one services? Probably not. Although I do know of 1 or 2, and the trick is that they've gotten so, popular and valuable in the right clientele that they actually charge them, the 10 people they have $10 million a year.
There are those people.
But there's like 3 of them, and probably none of them are listening to this podcast, right? So there is a thing of like, what does success really mean to you? Why do you want that thing, right? So I think that's the first piece, is to say pieces of this actually resonate with you and the business you really want. And then start there. So if you actually like being on one-on-one calls, this is, like I said, this is going to be a heyday for you because people are going to really appreciate the fact that you're able to do it. It's the thing I've always loved doing it, yay for me right now.
Yeah.
If you don't really like lots of one-on-one calls, you don't like that interaction, you don't like the energy that it takes, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be anything other than about you, then you have to look and say, how much does the personalization matter to me? And what are the ways I can do that in more scale? Or is that something that I can allow someone else in my business to do, or I can bring someone else in my business to do? If you're moving from a course, let's say, just to give us a tangible example, a course into trying to offer a more personalized model, well, that means that you have a whole bunch of set predefined processes, worksheets, steps, data. Why couldn't you train 8-10 people to do that and deliver it one-on-one?
Yeah.
Now, you aren't having to be the one on the call.
Right.
Maybe all you're interacting with now are these 8 or 10 people, which may be that may be a manageable number for you, right? So that's one possibility. It's not necessarily the only possibility. For sure, it's not the only possibility. Maybe you offer group calls that allow some personalization on top of the course that you offer. But I think the key to actually getting success, and, for me, we've got to hold true to the title of the podcast, Building the Business You Really Want, is not chasing the thing because someone told you it's the thing to chase.
Right. And, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here in the conversation. Because you're right. There are so many different options after you make the decision, right? First you have to make the decision. Are one-on-one services what I want to move toward? Is that something I want to promote? Or do I want to try to shift what I'm doing with my group programs, with my courses? That's the first choice. And then after you make that choice, if you do decide, okay, one-on-one services make sense, then the business model you choose to approach offering more personalization to your clients. You've got some additional options there. What I think is more interesting, because I think that's all true and reasonable, and there's a lot of information out there. But what I think is more interesting is addressing the root cause of the pendulum shift. So I'm going to tell you what I see, and then I would love for you to see how that aligns with what you see. So, and if you were a course creator, you may listen to my words and go, that's not what I do, Tonya. And I'm so glad that's not what you do. But you are not everybody. I'm just going to ask you to have an open mind. And maybe I'm not talking to you. Maybe I'm talking to people you've taken courses from. But I feel like the last resurgence of online courses, right? So I felt like it was starting to hit about 2014. It got really hot in 2018 and was naturally already starting to go down, but then the pandemic. And so I think the pandemic forced the peak of online group programs and courses to be a lot longer than it would have naturally.
I would concur with everything that you just said.
All right. So let's just say that we've had a longer peak than we would have typically if the market hadn't been disrupted like it was. What happens with anything that becomes on trend and everybody does it is you always start off with some people who are doing it really well for a variety of reasons. Maybe they are offering a solution to a very specific problem, and that specific problem is rampant enough, right, that a lot of people have it, and their solution is decent enough, quality enough, that it actually works for a majority of people who have that problem. But then as it gets more popular, what ends up happening? People start selling, get into the business not of solving the problem, but of training other people to sell solutions to problems. Right.
That's
and so people,
my favorite thing, because that'll be the next thing we see is how to actually, come work with me one-on-one to learn how to work one-on-one. I haven't seen that yet. We should put that out tomorrow as a marketing thing. I could make $1 zillion, selling people.
Probably could. Yeah. And well, it's funny is I have a lot of clients in the homeschool market, and I'll get back on track here. A lot of clients who serve the homeschool market, and, they'll go to these webinars and stuff, and somebody will say, buy my thing and I can help you make 6 figures. And they'll ask, they're smart, they're smart business owners, and they'll say, I don't doubt that you can do that, but I serve the homeschool market and not sure what you offer is appropriate to me. Oh yeah, it works in any industry, right? And then they get into it, and one of my clients enrolled in like a 10K program, and it was the second session where they said, well, you just need to teach other people how to do how to write curriculum. And she was like, why would I'm a curriculum company. Why would I create more competitors in the market? And they're like, well, because your consumers won't spend more than they're already spending. And she was like, didn't I tell you that before I got into this? Because I kind of think I did. Right. So, but the thing is when more people get into the market, the quality drops. Mm-hmm. Right. It's Absolutely. It's the same thing as, get a designer handbag and then Target gets a license with the designer. I don't think anybody thinks the Target version is actually the same quality as the Rodeo Drive version, right? It looks the same, but it's not quite the same. But then what happens, right, is so now the market is flooded with group programs and online courses, not all of which are of the same quality, not all of which are of the same effectiveness, but word starts to spread that online courses aren't working, that group programs aren't working. And because they're not, right? Because the quality went down. And then people start to go, okay, so what else is, and then they start wanting more attention because the reason they don't work in general terms is they're oftentimes too standardized. To create something to serve 100 people, you can't control for every possible eventuality. What you have to do is say, okay, so this is the general standard that I'm going to teach you. Your mileage may vary, but you're going to have to handle that customization on your own as the, business owner and the expert in your business. And that works for some and it doesn't work for others. Do you have any disagreements so far, Gwen?
I have no disagreements. And I think the piece that you mentioned, which was almost a throwaway piece, but I think it's actually the critical piece because I've seen it so many times, is courses work really, really well when it's a very specific and or acute kind of problem. So therefore has a very limited number of answers, options, learnings to solve that problem. But as the course creators who are teaching people how to create courses and that's actually all that they know how to do is how to teach other people how to do the thing that they're doing, which they haven't really done other than this one course, teaching them to teach other courses, right? The problem there is they make it sound like you can do anything in a course. Mm-hmm. And technically the answer is yes, but we're assuming course like high school, college, graduate school, where it's actually interaction and personalization, and it's not just fixed content like we do now, right? Because that's the nature of it. And so I think the problem is that we get people who are dealing with very complex problems, trying to go with a very simple solution. And I will have to say, this is one of the places, sorry, Tommy, you know how I feel about this, is my tiny T trauma about marketing, that I get really upset about marketing, is that they sell this as this will absolutely work for you. And it's like, because it worked for me. And it's like, well, you're a test case of one. I don't care if it worked for you. I want to hear how many hundred other people of all sorts of industries and backgrounds and experience and age and knowledge and all the things also had it work for them. Because it working for you, there are so many factors that no one can even take into consideration because it's all of our background and our history and knowledge and experience and things that we don't even think may have contributed that did in fact contribute to that success. And when we're in specific, that's one thing. But when we're in these broad strokes, I think that's where people start feeling the failures.
Yeah. And so what I'd like to do is I just want to spend a few more minutes kind of talking a little bit more about what the market is looking for now. And then I want to shift into how we as individuals, business owners, especially those of us who are women, because women do, it's not that men don't have competing priorities, but women have just some different societal demands than men typically do. What could shifting from a one-to-many model toward a one-to-one model look like for a woman in business, whether she's a solopreneur or she has a team? So, and I, full disclosure, like I am a course creator. Like I don't have a ton of courses that are actively for sale, but I have a couple. So,
and I feel like I can do in a couple different areas that I have.
Yeah, well, you've got DIY courses. Like mine are all live delivery. I always tell myself I'll get to DIY but I'm just not there yet. But what I see is, what I see the market frustrated, what I'm seeing people post on LinkedIn, and I'll be honest, like I'm not a big course person these days either, unless I'm looking for a very specific thing. The last course I took was like teaching me how to leverage everything within Google Workspace, like the Google suite of tools. Very specific information I likely could have gotten if I had, pardon the pun, Googled it all, but I didn't have time or energy to do that, and I didn't know all of what was possible. So I took a course from an expert so that they could show me everything that was possible so that I could then later decide what I wanted to dig deeper into. But for the most part, I personally shifted away from courses and into seeking one-on-one service providers because I got tired of 3/4 of the group calls being spent on people who were at very, very different places in business than I am. And I do find a lot of times in these open Q&A calls, the people who are, say, mid-level of experience and higher are not often the people who are asking the questions on the mic. It's a lot of times it's the people who are much more early stage. And I love beginners. I love mentoring people. But it's really hard when I look at everything I have to do in the course of a week and to go, I'm spending an hour today. And all of these questions are questions that could have been answered if somebody had just watched the pre-recorded video or done something else. So I think part of it is a time thing, especially on those that have like live Q&A calls, live support, right? It's like, I'm not actually going to leave here knowing more than when I got here, then I don't want to be here. The other thing is going, okay, but I have already done a lot of what's presented in this framework. Because that's the other thing, right? A lot of these courses, to your point about marketing, is they're marketed like, I'm going to help you do this. And then when you start it, they take you into a bunch of foundational stuff. Because of course, if the foundation is not laid correctly, you're not going to get the outcome. Sometimes you get into that course and you have already laid that strong foundation. So you're back to feeling like time is wasted. And if the course is dripped out, for instance, so you have to wait till week 3 to access the week 3 material. That can be frustrating. I think what I also see is just everybody is trying to do the best that they can to increase their profit margin. Okay. When I am learning to learn, or I'm looking to learn, I am looking to either be able to be more efficient to the work I bill clients for, or to specialize to the extent that I can bill at a higher rate. So that's how I'm increasing my profitability by taking a course. Now, I'm sure the course creator or the group program facilitator, they're looking to increase their profit margin by serving as many people as possible, hour for hour. But I don't get the same experience when I'm in a group program of 10 people as I do when I'm in a group program of 100 people.
Because how could you?
Right. Exactly. So
now you're getting 100th of an hour as opposed to 1/10 of an hour.
Yeah. And so I think that there was a time, and then I'm going to hand the baton back to you, Gwen. There was a time where we said, well, the group program's $500 a month. And I could, and they say if I want to work with them one-on-one, that's $5,000. All I can swing is 500. So, they're so amazing. I will work with them in any capacity I can. So I'll take the $500 a month option. Now, and maybe I'm the only person on the planet, but I don't think I am. I'm kind of sitting back and going, okay, so what would it take to be able to give them $5,000 for 1 month of their time? Because I kind of feel like I would go farther in 1 month individually with them than I would in a year of working in this group program at $500 a month. And it's the whole thing, right? It's like you can usually go faster and deeper one-on-one than you can in a group setting, because while I get a lot out of my fellow group members' experiences, I can't get as fast and as targeted as I would be if I was all alone. What do you think, Gwen?
So that last piece, is what we see with the 3 offers that we have at Everyday Effect. The three kind of primary offers that are what I'll call high interactive offers. One is completely asynchronous. One includes a small group program. And when we say small group, we really mean small group. We're trying to max it out 8, 10, 12. We are not, small group is not even meaning like 25. You're right. It's a small group. But it also has a small one-on-one component. And then we have, our upper component that is a completely one-on-one component. And as we were doing all of our marketing rewrite and rework, we really realized that what it is not only, how much do you have to invest, because that is a factor. I mean, let's be honest, not everyone can afford the full one-on-one piece. But at the same point, the ones who work me one-on-one get further faster because it is intense and it is directed, right?
Yes.
The people who are in the small group, because they get a lot of individual time in the small group because of the way that we've designed it, and they do get some individual time, also go faster than the folks that are in the asynchronous program, which they also get directed time, one-on-one individual coaching, but just in an asynchronous, less directive, less intense, less kind of time. And so each of those but you can see, and we've watched some folks move from one to another and back and forth in various, combinations. And we can see they move faster, the higher up they go. Mm-hmm. And we just had someone come back who originally was in the small group program and said, the group dynamic just doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. I know that. How much would it be to work with you one-on-one? What's the way we can make that work? And so we made an offer, and she said, I've only got enough to guarantee that I can work with you for a month and a half. She was coming in at a half month. We don't normally do half months, but she was coming at the half month mark. And I said, fine. And I knew that I would get her as far as I could. But she said, if you get me as far as I think you're going to, then I'll have the money to continue to work with you. Mm-hmm. And I really think that's where the difference is, with all of them, is how much do you want? And I think it's a valid question that you brought up of, I could pay $500 a month for 10 months, or I could wait, or suck something else up or put something else off or whatever and pay $5,000 this month. Which one will get me further at the end of 10 months? My guess is the $5,000 for 1 month. Mm-hmm. Because
it depends.
It depends. It depends on what the issue is. Back to, if it's a broader, more complex issue, most likely you're going to get further with it. Yeah. Now, if it's something that's more intense or acute, or something that really will take you 10 months to do regardless, maybe the $500 a month really is the way to go, because it's keeping you on track. So back to, my standard, there is no single answer, because I really don't believe that there's a single answer.
Right. And I know that can be hard. For someone who's listening, right, it can be hard to not just tell me what to do and I'll do it. But when it comes to figuring out, because where I got to
say something about that. I have to say something. I don't usually interrupt you, but I have to this time.
Okay.
Because often that is actually the issue. I just want you to tell me what to do and I'll do it. But the problem is they don't know enough to really tell you the right thing. And I think that's part of the reason where often we find people failing at courses, because they're looking for the thing that just tells me what to do and I'll do it. And it's like, but that's not actually the problem. But you don't know that because we haven't had enough interaction and conversation and whatnot. So that mindset, that attitude can actually be part of where the frustration is coming from. Sorry. Yes. I just had to say that.
Yeah. And that actually made me think of something else. Which, okay, I am going to just say it. I wasn't going to, but I will. Which is, if group programs are your thing, I am not here to convince you not to do a group program. That isn't it. But one inherent challenge of a group program is you will have people who believe with their heart of hearts that they are doing everything you tell them to do, like letter of the law. And if you were to have the opportunity to talk to them a little bit more closely, you would find out that they are doing what I like to call the bizarro version of what you have told them.
We have talked about this before. I don't think we've ever talked about it on the podcast. And I love your bizarro version. Yes, you are right.
Which
it seems obvious to you.
And if you're familiar with Superman comics, then you understand who Bizarro is, but which means it's like, when you look at what they've done, you're like, that is not what I told you to do at all. But when you take a step back, you can see how in their mind, they did everything you said point by point by point, and not one single thing that you meant for them to do. An example for me is I was supporting an organization that taught, course creators, and we were teaching market research. And one of the things that we taught was market research conversations, and, have 50 so that whatever you offer you've got offer market fit. You're making sure that you're designing something the market wants. This is, for many of you, course creation 101. But this particular student was like, I had 100 conversations and I got nothing. I don't have time for this. And it's like, okay, 100 conversations and you didn't get anything usable. I am just shocked. And then I found out that their 100 conversations consisted of what I will call spamming LinkedIn groups with the questions, and then DMing all these people in LinkedIn groups with their questions, which is not the type of market research we were teaching. We were teaching market research interviews, get this person one-on-one on a Zoom call and ask these questions back and forth. But they were just like, well, you just said, reach out to folks on LinkedIn to ask these questions, which is what we did say. Reach out to them on LinkedIn to book the appointment so you have the call, so you ask the questions in person. But that is not what this other person interpreted. And the reality is they really did believe they were doing everything right. And in the conversation, I was like, wow, in an effort to do everything right, you did everything wrong. But that's the sort of stuff that traditional courses, like the course creator, doesn't know, right? Because you're just not as connected to your students as you would be otherwise. So thank you for bringing that up, because it is true. What I wanted to shift to now is really talking, though, about if I'm the business owner, because I think it's important. If I'm the business owner working one-to-many, can working one-on-one work for me? Because, there are some undeniable values of working one-on-one. When you work one-on-one with clients, you definitely build a stronger relationship. You get more trust. So a lot of times your one-on-one clients will stick with you longer than group clients. You get such a deep understanding in what their problems are and potential solutions. You can oftentimes help them at a much wider scope than you could in a group environment. And you tend to both get to know each other well enough that the referrals tend to be a little bit stronger, right? Than there are in courses. But Gwen, what I kind of want to talk about, though, is how does that become sustainable over time? So again, we're only talking to the person who says, okay, maybe it's time for me to do some one-on-one, or maybe add one-on-one to what I'm already. I think the first place where we really get stopped up is on pricing. What do you have to say about that?
Well, so obviously one-on-one work has to be priced higher than group work. It just has to. Back to, we've only got so many hours in a day. And the next question was, relates back to the beginning of the conversation in the podcast is, do you have to be the one to deliver all of the one-on-one work? Or can you subcontract or hire, depending on, what makes the right, business model sense, someone to deliver some amount of the one-on-one work? So now it's not your hour, but it's multiple people's hours. Now, obviously, if you're I'm just going to pick a random number. If you're charging $200 an hour, you can't be paying them $200 an hour because there's nothing left for you, and you're paying for the marketing and all of the things. Can you do that in a way that works? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Depends on your market, depends on your topic, depends on all sorts of things. My instinct has been, if you've been doing coursework, you usually can find people who really got your coursework and would love to be able to share it. But back to, you've also got to find people who are good at sharing the knowledge, not just implementing the knowledge, right? Different kind of thing. So there is a pricing piece. How much more are we going to price it versus group work? Do you want to shift completely from one to the other? Maybe, maybe not. Do you want to have what I'm going to call an interim step? If you've been doing what I'm going to call large group work, a membership that has, 500 people or 1,000 people in it at a pretty low price point, do you have something that's a mid thing as opposed to completely one-on-one. Where it is actually small group work, you limit the size. So you're still getting some scale.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting more access to you. Kind of the difference like we talked about of a 10th of an hour versus 100th of an hour. Mm-hmm. Right? Kind of option. That potentially is in there as well. And then back to, do you need to be the person delivering that information, or could you bring someone else into that and you pop in once a month if you're doing that as a weekly call? I'm making all of these, there's so many options here in a business model. I'm just making assumptions along the way. So pricing is gonna play into it, and back to how much of the pricing that in your group model is paying for infrastructure that if you aren't doing group model, you don't have to pay for.
Right. But that would presume.
That's a piece that people don't always think about. Sometimes there's some infrastructure piece that you're actually paying for in this large group model that you don't really count, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, but when I'm back to making up a number. Mm-hmm. Instead of, 500 clients, I have 15. Oh, all of a sudden there's some huge pieces that I can drop. And when I raise the price, all of a sudden, technically I'm making the same amount. Now back to, is it the work you really want to be doing? Different question.
Right. So I think
there's options, but I think you have to get creative.
So there's no shortage of options. And I do like what you were saying about having to be creative. What I'm hearing though is if this is a path you want to go down, you're going to have to first start by thinking about what is it that you're doing that you would enjoy personalizing? What needs to be standardized? And then, looking at, I think you made a really good point about there are different ways to segment your offer. Okay. You don't have to go from my flagship offer is a membership with 1,000 people to I now exclusively work one-on-one. You could say, okay, so like what are some steps between the membership of 1,000 people and working with me one-on-one? And are there any steps in there that seem enjoyable that I would like to do that may make sense for me and make sense for the person taking it? Because, something that you have said several times on the podcast, Gwen, is if you don't enjoy it, then it's not part of sustainable success for you. So back to you, who loves to be in Zoom calls all day long. As you exquisitely happy, right? But the average woman we need at least doesn't love to be in Zoom calls for as many hours per day as you love to be in Zoom calls. And so what is sustainable for you is not sustainable for them.
Right. I would almost never recommend my business model to almost anybody that I've ever come across, because they'd have to pull all of their hair out and they'd be blind because they would have poked their eyes out at some point.
Yeah. Although I have to say though, having met your clients, I would be in 6 hours of Zoom calls a day with your clients. They are amazing. So maybe it's just a matter of picking, if that's your business model, also thinking about who do you want to be with in that amount of time.
That's a really interesting point that I think I don't think we were planning on talking about, but I think it's actually a really interesting point to bring up. And that is, you can deal with, if you're grading them, A to F, like we did at school, you can deal with definitely a pretty good handful of B clients and definitely some C clients, and maybe even a D and an F client when you've got a membership of 1,000. Mm-hmm. But when you're dealing with clients one-on-one, you do not want to ever be getting on a call where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to fill in the blank. And I never do. Even when I know we have to have a hard conversation, because sometimes we do have to have hard conversations. It's never like, oh, I do not want to get on the Zoom call with fill in any of my client names ever. And so if that was happening on any sort of regular basis, like more than once a year, which isn't very often, right? But like more than once a year, that would be like, this is probably not a good client, right? And that would change my willingness to do the one-on-one. And so you may, if you're moving to one-on-one, also have to get better at vetting your clients on the way. And we didn't even talk about that, but that's actually a huge point. And I think it's one of the places that people struggle when they move from group to one-on-one is often the people who say, oh, I want in, are not the people that you want to be in.
Yes. And so let's leave this here. I have a feeling that we'll be talking about this topic more in the coming months. So, kind of to just wrap a bow around it is, even if high-touch relationship-based services are making a strong comeback, right, as both business owners and clients recognize their value, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right approach for you. If you do, however, want to explore the idea of offering more high-touch services, let's just start with rule number 1 is you've got to make sure that you're offering these services to people who you genuinely want to spend that amount of time. Mm-hmm. Because to Gwen's point, that sort of the annoying person, the person who is argumentative, the person who always has some random, like 1 in a million example to throw into the group call, like they're easy to manage in the course of an hour when there are other people you're going to be talking to. But to spend an hour with them with no buffer will exhaust you really quickly. Another thing to consider is your boundaries. So I think a lot of people would say, in order to be successful with one-on-one work, you need to be able to set and to maintain very clear boundaries with your time and with what the scope of the container is. But you also owe it to yourself and to the people you work with to only enter into engagements with individuals who will respect the boundaries you set. And to keep in mind that you will not be able to manage the volume of work in a one-on-one capacity that you could manage in a group capacity. Gwen, did I leave anything out there?
I don't think so. And I think the most important thing out of all of it is make sure it's what you really want to do. Because I know there are some people who are really, really great course creators and or really, really good group facilitators who the thought of one-on-one work is like, so now I have to do this. It's like, no, you don't. You don't. Because if you're really good at what you do, you'll still be really good at it when it's not the cool thing to do.
Right. And if anything, you'll be standing out even bigger, better, brighter.
You'll be one of the few still doing it.
Right. And so what I'm going to say is that regardless of whether you're all in on group experiences or you're all in on one-on-one or you're somewhere in between, if any of it is making you feel stretched thin, you're struggling with burnout, or maybe you really want to make sure that you avoid burnout while you're offering these meaningful client experiences, I would encourage you to download our assessment called Breaking the Burnout Cycle. It is both assessment and action guide. So we're not going to have you take a test and then go, oh yeah, you got a problem. It assesses where you're at with burnout so that you can create an action plan to get out of it. And it is free. All you have to do is go to thebusinessyoureallywant.com/burnout and you can get your copy today. We will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallywant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.